Despite being raised on Earth, Felix, as his adopted parents called him, still doubted much of human culture. Things they talked about with absolute certainty often left him feeling a bit confused. They called machines alive, with male and female pronouns, despite them being hunks of metal and plastic. He never understood their love of horror and ghost stories, nor why they treated much of them like truth. Yet at the same time he understood things others of his race didn't. The human spirit, the desire to go further, see more, to simply be better than he was yesterday, even if it was in some small way. It was that human spirit that landed him as the sole occupant of the explorer ship C-16 Alpha, mapping a stellar nebula out in the Delta Sector. He enjoyed it, out here discovering things few others knew, learning how the very stuff of the universe interacted when stars were being born. That was until something went horribly wrong. He wasn't sure what happened. All he knew was that the engines had gone critical. Not enough to rip the hull open, but enough to hurl him down the corridor and crack his head against the wall. When he came to, he couldn't see much, flashing emergency lights and a lot of his own blood. He passed out again. Coming to again, he blinked, confused. He felt like someone had shoved a hot poker through his guts and couldn't feel his legs. Then came the voices. A few, then more. Blinking his 6 eyes trying to clear the voices, he flinched. 2 human women sat on the floor across from him. "Well, you're not dead yet," one of them said. Felix was more than a little confused. Sure, he'd grown up in human colonies, and he'd gone to church with his parents, but he was sure that angels were supposed to have wings and not wear the grey overalls of a spacer. And it isn't your time to go. "Now, your rescue beacon is 1 floor down, and there's another ship half zone away," the second one said, and pointed down the hall, where the steps down to the storage bay below him were. They were 10 meters away, but with how mobile his legs were, it might have been a light year. "Oh, stop whining," the second commented. "You've got 2 good arms, so grit your teeth and crawl." The both of them vanished. Felix hissed in pain, and his arms felt like lead. He considered moving, then thought about how easy it'd be to lie down and just give up. As he started to lower his head, someone walked around the corner he'd just been blown from. This one was wearing red overalls and looked at him. "'Tis a mess in there," he said, then looked down at him. "Come on, lad. Show me some of this human spirit you're so proud of." He spoke in an accent, but not a thick one. The crawl was hell. 10 meters down the corridor, trailing his own blood and useless limbs. He reached the stairs and looked down the short spiral and let out a whimper, considering giving up again, yet even as he thought about it, another figure called up from down below. "Not far now. You're not going to give up now that you've gotten this far. You'll make it, without a doubt." Another accent. This one he could place. It was Russian. Spitting a mouthful of blood, he grabbed the railing and dragged himself down the steps, swearing every time his paralyzed limbs got caught or banged hard enough on something to make the corners of his vision flicker in pain. The bottom of the stairs was a hard-fought victory, and sat there on the last step was another person in a spacer's outfit. This one looked at him and let out a noise of sympathy. "That looks bad, lad," she said, as she stood up and pointed to a nearby shelf. "But the worst of it is over. Remember, when death is closing fast, that's when you try your hardest," she said, before heading up the way he'd come. His brain registered that there was something weird, but he didn't pay attention to what. The crawl to the rescue beacon was like dragging himself across broken glass, but the other alternative was death. Beside him, every step of the way, was a scruffy-looking dog that kept bumping him every time he faltered. He finally got there, his mind fogged with blood loss, pain, and a nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. Slamming his hand down on the activator, he passed out. He only awoke much later on the medical bed of the ship that had found him. The doc told him that he was immensely lucky. If they had been further away, they'd have not gotten to him in time, and that the fact he dragged himself so far while his body was so ruined was a small miracle. When he asked about the others, the doc looked at him like he was mad and reminded him that he was on a solo mission. It was then it clicked. The woman's feet. They'd not gotten any of his blood on her shoes. He shook his head and put it out of his mind, putting it down to blood-loss delirium. And the doc did the same. He forgot about it till years later, when he took a visit to the Lunar Tribute Dome, a mighty structure humanity erected in tribute to all those lost in space. In the entryway he froze, his eyes falling upon the hologram images that stood before the main entrance. He knew them, knew their faces. It was them, the people who'd encouraged him, made him not give up and refuse to let him die. They weren't hallucinations. They couldn't be. He'd never seen them before, even the dog. Small amongst the projections of humans who'd given their lives so humanity could reach the stars. Walking amongst them, he read the names. Gus Grissom, Victor Patasiev, and more besides. Eventually reaching the hologram of the scruffy-looking canine, he read the name and inscription. Laika, first to touch the stars. He stood there for a long time, wondering just who or what had saved him. All he knew was that should he end up with his likeness in these halls, he'd be proud to have it here.